Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conference Connections. My name is John Turner. I'm Manager of Community Development and Research at the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. Before we get started today, I want to tell one of our panelists, Pat Anderson, if she's on right now, if she could log off and go to your email and check the new invite I just sent you. That will get you on as a panelist, and we should be able to see your camera. So sorry for the technical difficulties, but we'll get it figured out. So this is Conference Connections. NIFA has a conference every year, the Housing Innovation Marketplace, and unfortunately this year we had to postpone and then cancel it because of the pandemic. But we had such great speakers and so much great information to present. We decided to offer these webinars, and they've been going great. We've had there's Pat. We've had some great attendance, and we do appreciate everybody's interest. And all of these are on our website. You go to nifa.org under Community Development, and then there's an Outreach and Action section where you can see the webinars and the PowerPoints. Excuse me. And then we have a YouTube channel. You go to YouTube and type in NIFA Housing. You'll be able to find them that way. Great sessions. Also, before our presenters get started, we do have a way for you to ask questions. You can use our question feature. We'll be monitoring your questions and ask those at the end of the webinar. If you really want to ask a question, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So we have a great session today, something that's really near and dear to my heart, because I remember renting for 12 years and then making that decision to buy a home, and it was really the best decision we could have made. But there was a lot of questions, and I think you're going to get some great information today. So the topic today is rental versus home ownership analysis, and really it's about what are the resources for you? How do you make that decision? Is buying a home the right choice for you? Is renting the right choice? What are the resources? And we've assembled a great team of professionals to present to you today. We have Denise Parker from Family Housing Advisory Services. We have Danielle Swerczek from MGIC, and Pat Anderson Cifuentes with NeighborWorks in Lincoln. So I think oh wait, one more thing. At our conference every year, we have sponsors and exhibitors. So let's give a shout out to them. We have Horizon Bank and Midwest Housing Equity Group will sponsor. And our exhibitors that we're highlighting today are the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce and Assistive Technology Partnership. There we go. So let's hand it over to our first speaker, Denise Parker. I'm going to make you the presenter, Denise. I'm sending it over to you now. Denise Parker is the Assistant Director for the Homeownership Program at Family Housing Advisory Services. Denise spent her entire career working in many different areas of housing, using her 25 years of mortgage lending experience with her college education and social work. Denise began managing affordable housing programs for low to moderate income home buyers. All of these experiences led Denise to her current position, teaching home buying education and providing housing counseling to set home buyers up for success. Thank you, Denise, and I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Like you said, I am Denise Parker from Family Housing Advisory Services. Our organization mission is to improve the quality of life and eliminate poverty by helping people achieve housing stability and financial security. And Family Housing Advisory Services does that through many different housing programs, but because I'm in homeownership, and we're going to talk about homeownership today, homeownership is one of those ways to help people achieve housing stability and financial security. So where does somebody even start? Well, it's rare for a person to one day just be sitting around saying, you know what, I think I'll buy a house. And then they go get approval, pre-qualification, find a perfect home, and then get their offer accepted. Right now, yeah, that's a dream. And close all that quickly, all that smoothly, just one day sitting around thinking they're going to buy a house. Purchasing a home is one of the biggest decisions a person makes in their life, and it's one of the most complicated transactions. So to be the most successful, it's really important that they educate themselves. So in today's world, how do we educate ourselves? Yep, we go to the internet, right? We have a sore arm, we Google, what happened? Why is my arm sore? What could the possibilities be? We go to the internet to educate ourselves. But is everything true on the internet? Not always. In researching, I did a little research myself. research how to prepare to buy a home. And I found article after article and checklist after checklist. And there's not really any of them that were a complete way to educate anybody on this complicated process. It really doesn't fill in all the gaps. And then which do you believe? And then many homebuyers have challenges to overcome to purchase. And the articles and the checklists, they kind of touch on some of the challenges, but they really don't touch on how to resolve those challenges. And that's really a very individual thing based on the person's needs and their challenge and how to handle that. I find the biggest challenge is really them understanding the process enough to feel like it's a reachable goal. A lot of people think you've got to be on your job for 2 years to even be approved. You've got to have 20% of a down payment to be able to purchase a home. You've got to have credit scores up in the 700s. All of those things, people think that this isn't, I'm not ever going to be able to be a homeowner. I won't be able to achieve that goal. But, we know that with education, they understand better, that is a reachable goal. So doing some research on the internet, that's an okay way to start, but to be a successful home buyer, the first step is really to take some good quality home buyer education. And there are a lot of different options, and I'll talk about those later. So home buyer education, why attend? Well, buying a home is one of the most important decisions an individual can make during their lifetime. I talked about that. You really need to know what you're doing, you need to be able to be educated so you can make the right decisions, make good choices in that process. An informed buyer borrower, as an informed buyer borrower, the purchasing process goes much smoother. I've come from the lending world into the education world. I've seen buyer borrower processes not go smooth. I know some of you out there work with buyers and borrowers, and you've seen that process not go smooth when they're not educated, when they don't know enough, when they don't understand the process. And it can be stressful. It can be heartbreaking. I mean, really heartbreaking. And it really impacts everybody involved, the realtor, the seller, the buyer, the lender. So it really is important to have that process go as smoothly as possible. In our education, we have experts in the field come to the workshop and then make themselves available to the buyer. So they educate the buyer on the topics, and then they're there to answer the specific questions these buyers have. We have homeowners insurance agents come talk about the process of doing comparison shopping, what kind of coverage you need to ask for, and then that homeowners insurance person is there, and so the attendees can just ask questions that come to mind. We have a home inspector come and talk about the home inspection process and how important home inspection is and how it is worth that money that you pay for it. We have a realtor come and talk about the real estate contract because the contract I use is about 16 pages. That's 16 pages of legal verbiage that most people don't understand. And there's little things that, sure, the buyer probably understands the offer they're making, the dollar amount, the personal property they're throwing in there, things that they're asking the seller to do, but they don't understand all those other little paragraphs in the contract. So we have a realtor go over that. We have a lender come speak about loan programs just to let people know that there are different loan programs to fit the needs that they have. So that helps them understand all of those topics. So what is learn? Well, is homeownership right for them? We start from the very beginning, and it's really important that somebody who's sitting at their computer thinking, I think I'll go buy a house, it's really important they get educated on that and really understand, is homeownership right for them even? There's pros and cons to it. And we go over the pros and cons. Pros of building wealth, freedom from your landlord restrictions, predictable housing costs. But then with that come the cons, which would be cost of repairs and maintenance, the time required for the repairs and maintenance, giving up your free time, lack of mobility. It's not as easy to just sell your house as it is to put your notice in at a rental. So starting from the very beginning. And then talk about the types of mortgage. Like I say, we have a lender come to make sure they're aware that there are different mortgage types and they fit different needs. We go over the mortgage approval process. We talk about the guidelines, the requirements, the documentation needs, why the documentation is required, what the lender looks at on that documentation. So there's really no surprises. They really understand that process. We talk about basic financial management, budgeting. They need a budget to get money to close. but they also need to continue budgeting. Once they are a homeowner, they'll need to budget for the home maintenance account, so they've got some money set aside for home maintenance and home repairs and that type of thing. So that financial management piece is important. We talk about the cost to close on a home, so there's no surprises when they go to purchase a home. They really have an idea of what they're going to need and how to work with that, how they can maybe come up with some down payment assistance or grant funding to help them with those funds to close. Like I said, we talk about the real estate contracts, we talk about home inspections, homeowners insurance. We go over the closing process so they know how important it is to stay in touch with their loan officer at those last moments. When you're getting close to closing, it's very time sensitive. And we talk about homebuyer responsibilities. Once they purchase a home, what their responsibilities are: to be a good neighbor, to be part of the community, to be part of the citizens patrol, just really contribute to your neighborhood and make it a stable neighborhood. So NIFA requires homebuyer education, as most affordable loan programs and down payment assistance and grants do as well. These are some good options, but the buyer always needs to check their program, their specific grant, down payment, whatever they're going through that requires education, to be sure which ones are approved. I want to tell you how I realized how important homebuyer education is, and this is before I was doing homebuyer education. It was when I was a loan officer and I had borrowers come in. It was a husband and wife, and the wife was not on the loan. It was just the husband on the loan. So they came in one day. He was required to take homebuyer education face-to-face. So I had them go to Family Housing Advisory Services and take his education face-to-face. The next time they were in my office, I'd talk to Mr. Borrower. Okay, Mr. Borrower, we need this documentation. We need to have this documentation. Can you get me this? He would turn to his wife and tell her, she needs that documentation because of blah, 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 blah. And then he would turn to me and look at me and say, I learned that in the education. And then I smiled, and then we'd go on. And then another piece of documentation I needed. Okay, Mr. Borrower, we're also going to need to get this piece of documentation. And he turned to his wife and say, she needs that because of blah, 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 blah. And they turned to me and say, I learned that in the education. And it just got me. This is, the light bulb went off. He really understood what was going on, and that education really did teach him a lot. So it really made me appreciate how important it is to have homebuyer education to make that process go smoother. So why is homebuyer education so important? Well, we've gone over, helps customers or consumers make wiser choices. It prepares the buyer for the process so it goes smoother. And a Freddie Mac study confirmed that it lowers 90-day delinquency rates by 26% if they go through classroom education, and by 21% if they go through the home study education. So either one of those, it lowers delinquency rates. It makes them more successful as a home buyer. And that's why these programs ask for these first-time home buyers especially to take this homebuyer education to be more successful. So what I understand is we're going to wait until the end to ask questions, but just so that you know, if we're done with, when you get done with the conference, you got all your questions asked. If something else pops in your head, always feel free to call me or email me. I'm happy to answer any questions on homeownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Okay. Now we're going to hand it over to Danielle Swerczek. Danielle is the Senior Account Manager for MGIC. Over 60 years ago, Max Carl provided a solution for home buyers that wanted to achieve the American dream with less than 20% down. MGIC is a premier provider in MI today. Danielle is a Senior Account Manager handling 3 states in the Midwest, and her customers are her most treasured asset. MGIC provides great value adds for those that are seasoned in the business or brand new. Sorry. Take it away, Danielle.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. And NIFA, thank you for allowing me to chat about rental versus homeownership analysis today. And Denise provided some great information, so I hope you were able to have some great takeaways from her too. So as John mentioned, I am a Senior Account Manager for MGIC located right here in Nebraska. NIFA is near and dear to my heart. So let's go ahead and get started. So basically, anything I present today is not necessarily the views of MGIC, not necessarily the views of MGIC, but basically, if anything came about, my opinions are my opinions, and MGIC is just stating facts for you today. So what I want to talk about is really rental versus the homeownership. At one time, we've probably rented in our life. That's kind of what you do as part of your stages in life, whether you do it in college, whether you do it as your first job. But eventually, at some point, we think about getting into homeownership for lots of different reasons, mainly because it's just the American dream and that's what people do. So when we talk about renters, we talk about overall, which do you think is more affordable to you today? Is it renting or is it buying? And as you can see from the information presented here, it depends who you ask. Renters would tell you renting is more affordable to them. If you ask owners, they would tell you that owners are owning a home is more affordable to them, and that is their preference. You can see from the graph that I'm presenting on the screen here. And by the way, this presentation, as a side note, you will be able to receive these slides after the presentation is over. NIFA will send those out to those participating today. So as I mentioned here on these graphs, so if we move ahead, what renters are most cost burdened with more in 2017 is when we ask renters what is preventing them from buying, affordability of renting versus owning is near the bottom of every survey, like this one from NerdWallet that states financial reasons other than affordability ranked higher than others. Renters most cost burden then in 2017, approximately what percentage of your total household income after tax do you pay in rent mortgage? Payments excluding utility bills and other fees. I believe it's more affordable to rent than to buy. 17% believe that. And then as you look toward the bottom here, and not enough feel like they have saved for a down payment, which as we know, and we're going to hear several times on this webinar today, that's just not the case. There's lots of resources for first-time home buyers and for availability to get into a home with as little as 3% down, sometimes even less, depending on the programs out there. So what do you think is the biggest obstacle that is keeping you from buying a home at this time? Well, as you can see, when you ask renters, they will tell you that it's saving enough for a down payment, because the perception is still that you have to have 20% down to get into a home, which, as we know, being professionals on this phone call today, that's not the case. And sometimes it's just a lack of education with first-time home buyers as to what is really available to them out there. And yes, there will be a mortgage insurance or other things on the property or the loan, but that doesn't necessarily mean you still can't get into a property and start gaining some equity and having some, sorry about that, having the American dream come true. So if we talk about the American dream, 80% of non-homeowners report that their home ownership is part of the American dream. There's so many advantages to people being in a house, not only economically, personally, financially, all things to gain from having that. 82% of non-owners aspire to be homeowners. 72% of millennials consider owning home a top priority in life. Do they delay it more than other generations have? It's hard to say. With a lack of inventory, sometimes it's just not possible to get into a property right now, especially when you're talking about first-time home buyer price ranges, which, we're experiencing that every day with multiple offers on properties, escalation clause, those kind of things. So what is owning a home? Why is owning a home the American dream? It increases hours of volunteering. Studies have showed that people that have homeownership, they tend to give back. They give back to their communities. Owning a home increases children's homeowners do better in school. Some of us, especially during this pandemic, children that are not in homes, what is it like for them if they're trying to study in apartments, other facilities that parents are renting? What's the dynamic look like as opposed to being in your own home? Homeowners are 2.5 more likely to be in good health. And I'm not saying that people that are renting are not, it's just that these are what studies have shown, probably just different psychological effects on people, that they just show that they're in better health. 67% have better relationships with their families after buying a home. We all know that once you have a home, you start to have gatherings, you have cookouts, you have those kind of things. You have Christmas together in your new home, you have those family gatherings together that help strengthen family relationships. 76% of homeowners pursued new hobbies after buying a home. Although I'm a little delayed, so I've been a homeowner for a long time, I did pursue a new hobby because of COVID this year, which was my garden and a vegetable garden. And so that's kind of been a fun thing for me during this quarantine. But obviously, you just have more resources, you have more land that you can do gardening, you can plant gardens, flowers, that kind of thing. So definitely see how people would take up new hobbies. 79% of homeowners have feel like they have been made a better person just by being a homeowner. So why are they renting instead of owning? What's the number one thing that we think? What do you hear every day when you're talking to potential borrowers? It's just a lack of knowledge, right? There's two roadblocks to homeownership: rising home prices, and obviously lack of inventory can be included on this list, and then lack of funds for down payment. So you can see here, we're looking at appreciation rates. If you look at Nebraska, year over year, 4-quarter change. This is from 2018, quarter 4 to 2019. You can see that Nebraska had appreciation rate of almost 4%, which is really pretty good when you look around the country at other states. Forecasted year over year percentage change in price, Nebraska is at 4.5%. And again, I know some of these slides are technical and I'm kind of going through those, so we will send the presentation out after the fact so you can have this information. 37% of non-homeowners say lack of down payment is preventing them from purchasing a home, which we've already talked about. 65% indicate that saving a down payment is delaying their first time home purchasing, which they do want to purchase. It's just, again, it kind of comes back to education. As we professionals in this business, it's important for us to be able to educate potential borrowers. So not enough money down for a down payment and closing costs. You can see here the hot pink red is major obstacle, minor obstacles the navy, and then no obstacle is the blue part that you see there. So how much will millennials spend if they rent by the time they hit 30? $93,000. It's a pretty staggering statistic, and one that obviously, if you took $93,000 and you bought a home that many more years earlier, what would your equity in that home look like based off the appreciation values that we just saw in Nebraska? 28% of Omaha Council Bluff renters earned at least as much as households who recently purchased a home using a mortgage. And biggest challenge of all, lack of knowledge, what we just talked about. It falls on us as professionals to really walk people through the process. Thankfully, with the people that are speaking today, we do have some options. We have resources for them that they can go to and really get themselves educated. MGIC is a wonderful first-time home buyer website that I love to send people to, even if you're not first-time home buyer, or if you're just starting in the business. It's a great website to go visit because it's very encompassing for first-time home buyers. Glossary of terms, it has budget sheets, lots of great information, and I will share that site before the presentation is over so that you can visit it at your free will. 62% of Americans believe that you need 22% down payment to purchase a home. 62%. Only 23% of consumers are familiar with loan down payment programs. Obviously, NIFA is a wonderful program that can get new borrowers into new houses so that they can start living that American dream. So let's talk about private mortgage insurance for just a moment and how that can add some benefits to people that are looking at buying their first home. It gives you increased buying power, ability to use gift funds for down payment. It expands your cash flow options, meaning you can put down, if you have 20% down, but you need cash because you want to buy new appliances, you need that lawnmower, everything that goes into buying your first house. There's a lot of things and toys that have to be accumulated that need to go in that garage or in that kitchen. And if you choose to keep mortgage insurance on your loan, that gives you some flexibility with that cash to keep your cash to get those things taken care of. Lower monthly payments for higher credit score borrowers, less debt and more equity than FHA, and ability to cancel when no longer needed. We all know that once you reach that equity in the property with the 80%, then certainly that is able to come off the loan, whereas other programs don't offer that flexibility. Why is it so important now? Well, we all know that the millennials are the biggest generation, and the millennials are getting to the age right now that they are starting to look at homeownership. And we've got, inventory issues, but we also have great rates. So it's very time consuming, and it's challenging for them to get their first home right now. So if someone were to buy a $250,000 house right now, the potential growth in family wealth over the next 5 years, based on home equity, they could have $47,500 in equity in that property. So if we can get them into homeownership now, these are great things that they can start building up their family wealth. Homeowners' net worth is nearly 45 times greater than renters. Certainly another great statistic to look at when you think about how you're building wealth in homeownership. There is a $72,000 difference in median housing wealth of those who bought their first home between ages 25 and 34 and those who waited until they were 35 to 44. Again, you look at that age range and you're talking about the millennials who are all graduating college right now. Hopefully, after the pandemic is over, we'll be able to gain employment and get into their first home. Opportunity to help people. That's what we're here for, right? That's what we base our careers off of every single day, is we're here to help people. So nearly 100 million Americans plan to buy a home in the next 5 years. And depending where you are, again, we talked about the inventory, and hopefully we can get some baby boomers that are moving or downsizing, and then we can free up that inventory for the millennials as they come on the market. 42% of renters plan to buy a home within the next 2 to 5 years. Yay, renters, we're here for you when you are ready. And US millennial renters, we just talked about, 33% will be within the next 3 to 5 years from now, the younger millennials will be looking to gain homeownership. We just talked about that. Great, this is a great graph. I think this says a lot. And again, we will be sharing this after the presentation. So I mentioned earlier the website that we have available. It's called readynest.com. And the resources, the information, again, for first-time home buyers, move-up buyers, anybody even starting in the business. If you're on this call and you're listening and you're just getting yourself into this business, visit this website. It's great information. It's not down in the weeds, confuse you information. It's very all-encompassing. It's easily explained. There's detailed information. There's things you can print off as a resource, but there's also some fun things. So what happens if you have that big dog because you needed that big dog in that apartment, but now you're going to go buy a house? What does that look like? There's articles out here that talk about that. What colors are good for kitchens, small bathrooms, that kind of thing. Again, great information out here. I just encourage people to visit this website and just play around for a little bit. There's also buy now versus wait calculator. So if you're thinking of buying a house and you're trying to get, say, 3% down, what would that look like if you saved $400 a month? How long is that going to take you based on what your rent payment is and what you're trying to achieve for a down payment? Great calculator out there. It's super easy, and you can slide the scales to manipulate the numbers how you would like it. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I thank you for listening. My name again, Danielle Swerczek with MGIC. My email is attached there. If you'd like to reach out to me for any additional information, any kind of education that your company is looking for, I'm always available to help with those kind of things. Thank you so much. I hope you are finding yourself safe and healthy during this time. And I hope you enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Okay, Pat, I'm going to make you a presenter. You should get a prompt. Our final presenter today is a friend of mine from early 90s when we worked together at Lincoln Action Program. So I'm honored to be introducing Patricia Anderson Cifuentes. She's with Community Engagement at NeighborWorks Lincoln. Patricia has been employed with NeighborWorks Lincoln since 2008. But she has worked in collaboration for 25 to 30 years on neighborhood advocacy, revitalization, housing rehab, resident engagement, and leadership. In other words, street cred. NeighborWorks Lincoln mission is to help keep Lincoln a safe and prosperous community by revitalizing neighborhoods and promoting homeownership. The neighborhoods in which NeighborWorks is focused on are 65, 90% rental, low income, and ethnically diverse. So Pat, honored to have you today. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to you. Whoops, I think you're muted.
I am. I'm not muted now, right?
Yep, I can hear you. And
Okay.
just on your PowerPoint, can you start from the beginning so we can just see your slide?
Do you not see the slide?
Yeah, but we can see the toolbar around it. So if you hit from beginning, right there. I think that should do it. Well, let's try it. There you go. Now we can see
okay.
it.
Load delayed.
I'm handing it over to you.
Okay, this is us. This is NeighborWorks Lincoln. I'm going to be, I'm coming last. I'm going to be kind of the reality check for whether or not to rent or buy. Actually, John just read NeighborWorks Lincoln mission statement, but we do this through 3 lines of business, and that is homeownership. Whoops. The homeownership, real estate development, and community building. We uplift neighborhoods by empowering strong relationships and leadership through collaboration with city departments and community partners. And we help facilitate sustainable homeownership through homebuyer education and assistance programs, and proactively develop quality, affordable housing. We believe that a sense of home and connectedness matter in our communities and are key to building neighborhood equity, resiliency, and advocacy. Advocacy for the neighborhood, for families, for schools, all the way around. Whoops. As I said, I have a lot of show and tell right here. To buy a house or not. Whoops. Foundations. We like to start with the bottom and work our way up. And a good place to start is the foundations. They are constantly shifting, sinking, crumbling, leaking. And I have a few examples of these. These are, and I know that Lincoln is not alone in what our first-time homebuyers can afford, that 130 to what 200,000 market just is very scarce, and so we find a lot of problems. such as sinking walls. You can see this basement started to be rebuilt, but they didn't quite go all the way around. Love the old limestone, but this is a combination of limestone, and I'm not sure what that noose is there for. The leaking basements, always beware when there's new drywall put up. It's covering something. And you can see here someone attempted to brace this wall up, but there's no mortar. And it looks like that's the lighter ones. Somebody attempted to rebuild. That would not have been a professional. These are the consequences of foundation issues. All the joys of home ownership, right? On the left, you can see the crooked door, and on the right, as the foundation starts to give additions on the house, whether it's a bay window or a porch, start to separate from the house. Electrical, can everyone be an electrician? Sometimes when we look at our houses, one would think so. Everybody took their stab at it. I mean, you know, of course, we're looking at 100-year-old plus houses, and everyone does their own thing. Here's another conglomeration. I like the way they also attempted to insulate the flooring up above. You can see styrofoam stuck in underneath the floor joists. Adding to electrical or cutting off old electrical, it's good to cap it off, but at some point when it looks like this, it becomes a fire hazard. Fuse boxes not allowed. I lived in an apartment with a fuse box that looked much like this, and to change the fuses, I had to stand on the railing of a step to reach it. It was not fun. And there are more hazards. They are everywhere. We have to look out. This is a hazard, excuse me, not only for the homeowner, but also for the neighbor. This fan was originally wired with an extension cord. You can see it on the right-hand side. My basement had some wiring like that, lighting with extension cords. There are reasons to do a sewer check. On the left-hand side, I don't know if you can see that very well, but it is a chunk of 100-plus-year-old sewer pipe with tree roots inside, and the plumber said that that was the worst case they'd ever seen. It was totally compacted with tree roots. Oh, I'm going to go back there. Another reason to do a sewer check is this is a line that was replaced with when they found the problem on the left. And this sewer line in older houses, as often was the case, is shared by 4 households. So you never know what you're going to find. And there's rust hazards. Certainly having rust around a gas line is not safe. I'm sure you've seen recently where, I think it was Baltimore, that had the gas explosion, and especially on the East Coast, gas explosions are on the increase because of not just this, but decaying lines. And the window on the right was actually a metal window that rusted out. But there is hope. The pictures I showed you could scare homeowners away. We had a buyer on Plum Street that had a saw potential in this house. Doesn't look too bad from the outside, does it? But it had plenty of problems. It had lead paint, of course, because of the age of the house, was peeling, windows and doors that didn't fit. That great stuff foam is great in its place, but not to accommodate a door that doesn't fit. Doesn't quite work. There's a lot of debris and cleanup for this property. Plenty of electrical issues in the kitchen. It's hard to see, but they did not have a 3-pronged outlet in the kitchen. And of course, you see the old knob and tube wiring. And I don't know if you can tell, but the wiring around there is taped. And there's plumbing issues you have to be aware of. In this house especially, there was a lot of leaking plumbing. And once houses get to be 100 years old, hopefully the plumbing has all been torn out and replaced, but oftentimes it is not. And if they've piecemealed the replacement by where the leaking is, then you still have problems. And and this looks like a do-it-yourself plumber too, on your right-hand side. And of course, where there's leaking water, there's mold issues. All abound. But the new buyer saw potential, nice woodwork, wood floors, and they could use their imagination to see how this could have some potential. NeighborWorks Lincoln works with our city partners on assistance for down payment, but also on rehab. So, but what we do is address code issues. So for this house, there was full mold remediation, a new roof and gutters. We updated the electrical, replaced windows, and replaced the sewer line. What the homeowner did was quite a bit. They repaired walls, paint, installed new ceiling tiles, and installed walls in the basement, added electrical heat. And next they want to do the kitchen. Now they just moved in about 6 months ago, so they've done quite a bit. You can see where they put up walls in the basement and the heat, the ceiling. They're working on it, and they've got a nice, they did lighting in the basement and also the ceiling, replaced the ceiling tiles. So that's it for me. I thought I had one more slide. Our website, NeighborWorks website is nwlincoln.org. And I would encourage people to go there. You have a lot of resources today that have been brought up. But on our website, especially if you go to the Homeownership program, we have information about COVID. We have an overview of our program, which is much like Denise's. And the application is online, realtor information, and you can download a Homeowner's Guide to Success, which covers what to do if you're late for payment, assistance options for mortgage, and understanding the numbers, understanding your budget, basically. So that's all I have. The key thing is, if you renting versus homeownership, just be prepared for all the problems that can arise, because they're going to be your responsibility, not the landlord's.
Very good point. Let's see if we can bring everybody on screen. There we go. Well, thank you, Denise, Danielle, and Pat. We do appreciate it today. Nice blend of information, of that hope you know, I'm glad you mentioned, Danielle, about the American dream and really the reality checks. Some folks probably are going to be okay being renters, you know, and with their income, maybe that's just what they're going to need to be at. But to have that dream of finding a place and know resources. Are there any other thoughts that you might have had when you heard each other present? Comments you'd like to make? No?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there was, and I forgot. Danielle mentioned something. Though in looking at the percentages of the renters that will, of the millennials especially, that will purchase in the next 3 to 5 years, I was thinking in Lincoln's, our draft plan for affordable housing right now, one of the things listed is to look at alternative types of housing. And I really think, you know, single family home ownership may not be accessible because there's not enough people building it right now. It may not be accessible, and I think for people to, and I really hate the thought of people not having access to home ownership, because it does build wealth and security and stabilizes neighborhoods, and the thought of people not having access to that, to me, for Lincoln and everywhere, I think that's a scary thought. So to make homeownership accessible, I really think we need to focus on alternative types of loans. You know, maybe they buy that apartment. You know, why can't we condoize more apartments, and why do condos just have to be for people who can afford $500,000 and townhomes and such? We need to be more creative.
Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely a lack of inventory, and as the baby boomers age, you know, they may not necessarily want to move out of their property, and so that's not freeing up the inventory of that generation. And because the millennials are so much bigger than the baby boomers, it's, you know, it's really a crunch. And then, you know, for any new first-time home buyers to try to build something, it's just not feasible for them to do that with the cost of construction right now. So it is a dilemma. But Pat, I agree, we need to be a little bit more creative with different things that we can do, you know, for first-time home buyers.
We did have a comment someone had made about another hurdle for potential home buyers is credit, lack of credit, student loans. You know, how are you working to help them?
Certainly, student loans is, you know, something that Fannie and Freddie are always watching when it comes to underwriting guidelines. What I encourage people, especially if you have college-age children, in some capacity, allow them to start building credit right now, so that when they get to the point where they want to buy that first home, they do have some sort of credit established, whether that's through a credit card that you get for them that you know, they pay off every single month. Whatever it looks like for you and your family, it's important for them to start establishing credit, so that when they do go to get that first loan, there are some things that are on that credit report, and they're, you know, they're excellent with pay history and stuff, because that certainly helps things. And with the student loan, you know, that there's different variables there with when they make the first payment, that kind of thing that gets considered into the equation of underwriting that file.
I think one of the problems with student loans too is some of the potential buyers have already let those lapse. They're in delinquencies. They're at such a point that they don't know what to do. They're afraid to call the student loan company because they think that, you know, it's not something they can deal with. So just encouraging them and working with them to make that call. And, you know, student loan companies are really open to working with their borrowers and trying to work something out. And it's important to get that back on track. And they've got a lot of programs for that. So just encouraging them to deal with it and have that communication to get that on track and help their credit.
It'll be interesting, or scary probably more, to see as we emerge out of this COVID mess. How people are going to be dealing with their loans, if they've taken the forbearance and then they owe more, and that will just be interesting to see how people pull out of that.
Right.
Mhm. That comes back to education too. I think there was some initial, announcements that came out, and I think there was some misconceptions about what that really looked like as far as skipping payments. So again, it all comes back to us as professionals and educating people so that they are equipped with the knowledge to really make the best decision. Because I think some people got into that not knowing exactly what that would entail down the road, and in hindsight may not have actually taken the choice that they took. So it will be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Especially when once they realize that the interest will compound on that principal, and they'll owe a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they can't, at this point, even if they wanted to sell or refinance that loan, they have to somehow at this point make it current. So it was not a free ride for a couple months there, as some may have thought it was, just based on what the media was reporting.
There's never a free ride, is there? If we don't pay our Social Security taxes right now, it's not going to be free.
You would want it back in some capacity too. That's for sure. We all want it back in some capacity.
Yes, someone had asked. Oh, and so I think this spawns some additional question about if you had someone who was in the middle high 600s for a credit score, how long can they realistically expect to do everything right before they improve enough to pull the trigger on a home?
It depends on their budget,
right?
Too.
It depends on what's bringing that score down. If it's a late payment bringing it down, it's tougher to bring that score up, a little more time consuming. If it's just excessive balances on their credit, then that's just a matter of getting those paid down, and that really does help quickly. So it really just depends on what the challenge is and what's bringing that score down as to how long it's going to take, and then their commitment. And
And there are, we had a webinar on consumer credit that you could find on our YouTube channel that kind of goes into some of the details, some resources for folks, which is a lot of what these are, is really just making sure resources are getting to people, they're asking the right questions, and if they don't know, they know who to call to get help. So again, we appreciate your input. Pat, were you going to say something?
I was going to say early on that when we met to discuss this whole conference, this section of it, that education is the key. And NeighborWorks has a 0.1% foreclosure rate, and it's all about the education.
Well, and your resources too about educating them, and Denise had talked about that, to some extent. I mean, that education for some people might feel a little overwhelming when they're trying to buy a house and they're trying to get things ready to move, but that education is huge, especially for a first-time home buyer. You talk about the lack of education in high schools for kids just to learn basic financial things. I mean, that education is huge for home buyers going into it, and a reality check for them. So there's definitely resources out there. We just need to make sure that they know what they are.
We've had people go through class that owned a house previously and then took the homebuyer classes, and even they said that they learned a lot. So it's for everyone.
Yeah.
I bet I can learn some things. I've been a homeowner for a long time, but I bet, there's always a good takeaway from any education.
Yeah, I'm sitting there looking at Pat's pictures going, I've got some knob and tube wiring I probably should have addressed.
I do too, John.
Okay, good. Someone asked.
And actually that plumbing issue was mine.
Oh, serious?
That was my New Year's present.
Okay. Well, I know I have some tree roots too, because we've had to have the plumber out, but yeah, I mean.
They weren't even my tree roots. They were my neighbors.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, tree roots do a lot of damage, don't they? They lift up garages and foundation, and Mess up
They
your
do.
backyards. Yeah. We had a question here, and I don't know if, I know it's not part of this particular discussion, but as we know about the legislature, there's different bills that are passed or discussed. And right now people are talking about the $10 million affordable housing proposal. And I didn't know if any of you have been, I know I was thinking about, you know, Nebraska Housing Developers Association would be a good agency to maybe talk to. I know we have a Nebraska Housing Advocacy Collaborative working really hard on stuff like that here in Lincoln. So we can direct those contacts. But Pat, have you had any work with that through South of Downtown or NeighborWorks?
Actually, my cohort has been attending those, and they just got started back up again. You know, COVID delayed everything, so they've been meeting again for a month,
Yeah,
maybe a month and a half.
yeah, and I know some of the staff with South of Downtown Community Development Organization are part of that housing advocacy group. So those would be some agencies that'd be good to kind of tap into. Here's a
It's
question.
going to take, as Molly Ivins used to say, editorialist, that we have to get noisy. If we want affordable housing focus and we want that to be a priority, we have to get noisy because money's going to go elsewhere, where the big time lobbyists get paid.
Let's see, has the new credit scoring model had a negative or positive effect on consumers trying to purchase a home?
At this point in time, I have not seen it hit any of the reports I've seen.
Okay.
I know that they said it was going to be a little delayed on the mortgage side, so I'm just waiting for it to hit. So far, I've not seen any impact that it's had.
I haven't seen anything either.
No.
No,
Okay.
Bill hasn't mentioned anything on our end either.
Okay. Well, let's see. Oh, here we go. I recently read The Two-Income Trap. In it, the author had stout concerns against the lender and housing service providers promoting lower down payment percentages as it increases total loan amounts, among other reasons. If we contrast owner rental costs, shouldn't long-term financial security hold greater weight? That was a long one.
Yeah, can you repeat it?
Okay, sure. Yeah, and I kind of stumbled a little bit in it. Okay, so let's just skip to the actual question. There were concerns against the lender and housing service providers promoting lower down payment percentages as it increases total loan amounts, among other reasons. If we contrast owner rental costs, shouldn't long-term financial security hold greater weight?
That would be common sense, wouldn't it?
I would
Right.
say it would.
And then there's a follow-up. How do you advise people in purchasing the correct amount of home?
Well,
Well,
I think
each person kind of, you know, you have the ratios and what they can afford by the ratios, but I think each person with their lifestyle can really afford something different. I don't think it's a one size fits all. And so in working with a client or a customer, you need to see what they really feel comfortable with and what they're used to paying, what their rent is and what their new house payment is going to be. And really, that's their affordability. It's not really a ratio as much as it is what their lifestyle allows.
Their budget.
Right, right.
They need to know what
I
their
think
budget is.
yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there that can help people with, you know, budgeting, what that would look like, what they can afford. You know, the buy now versus wait calculator I talked about on the readynest.com, that is a great resource to look at those kind of numbers exactly. There's even a worksheet out there that you can print off, that you can write down everything that your monthly costs are, and then, you know, that can help you stay true to what you can afford. what your payment shock would be buying a house as opposed to renting, but what that would look like in the long run.
Again, it will be interesting to see what life looks like as we emerge from this COVID mess, because as people are paying off credit cards, staying home, not spending so much, we may see more people that with down payments for houses.
Yeah, and it kind of all boils back down to education, educating people on how to do that budget. I remember I provided rental assistance at my last job, and I had that situation where people would come in and want really nice apartments, and I have to kind of say, well, let's look at what your income is. We're going to help you with a rent subsidy, but we still have to follow reasonable rent or fair market rent. And so you kind of do that reality check. Well, I think we've pretty much hit all the questions that were asked. We really do appreciate you guys taking time. This was a session that was scheduled for our conference, so we brought that to the people today, and I hope I'm getting just a lot of great job. Thank you. Or the PowerPoint's going to be shared, stuff like that. So people really did appreciate your presentation today.
Super.
And what looks like, here's another one. What is your best tip to help a hesitant home buyer look to the future payoff of home ownership? Your best tips to help somebody kind of the tipping point.
To move them towards home ownership out of rental?
Yeah.
I think it's the interest rates right now. I mean, that's really that's why it's so popular right now, because it's a great time to take advantage of a low interest rate. For 30 years, you'll have that.
Yeah, in any capacity, you can make it work right now. Now's the time to buy for sure. It's a great time to buy.
And doing that cost analysis of rent versus home ownership, I think is really helpful. Both Denise and Danielle talked about that. That said, I do see a lot of people get into home ownership that probably should have stayed as renters. It is not for everyone. If you don't want to mow the lawn and go out after every storm and pick up branches, pick up trash, if you don't want to maintain your house, then you should probably certainly not look at single family home ownership. Maybe look at, if you want to purchase, maybe look at a condo or something with less maintenance. Single family home ownership is not for everyone.
Yeah. I think it was good that we had a nice blend today of kind of reality check, and resources. So I think, we pretty much not hammered, but highlighted, there's a good word. We highlighted all of the options and the benefits. So again, I'm getting great feedback, wonderful presentation. Thanks for the great information discussion. So that's attributed to you guys and your informational presentations. So thank you. Thank you, Denise, Danielle, and Pat. Good to see you again. And don't forget, everyone, you can go to YouTube, NIFA Housing. You go to our website, nifa.org, under Community Development, under Outreach and Action. This will be all our PowerPoints, and our video will be available. So thanks to all of you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Nifa. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.